Guys, so today I'm going to be talking about the fourth experience that I went through. And in the last video I ended on switching schools after the whole otter incident, and what I didn't cover was what also was going on during this period of time. And this video is going to be a little more difficult for me to talk about just because some of it's a little more fresh for me, and it's kind of emotional, so just bear with me on that. But it starts off with, at the time between sophomore and junior year, my parents were also getting separated. They weren't divorced, but my dad was going to live with my oldest cousin Ricky, and my mom was staying at my home. So at the time, Ricky, who my dad was staying with, I was extremely close with him. He was almost like a big brother to me, a really good friend. He worked at this big restaurant on the water, so he'd invite my girlfriend and I to come over. He'd always serve us, get us free food or drinks or whatever. And I would go hang out with him on the weekends. We'd go do MMA together. We'd go to the gym together. He was literally acted like one of my friends, one of my good buds from high school or something. So just keep that in mind throughout this video. So basically, my dad moved in with them, and everything was going good for a while. And then one day, the power just shuts off. And my dad's like, what the hell? Ricky's working, he has money, why isn't he paying the power bill? And we come to figure out that Ricky had no money because he was spending it all on prescription drugs like Xans and Percocets and stuff like that. And he was also taking my dad's painkillers that he had for his lower back, because a bunch of lower back issues. So he had prescribed painkillers for when it got really bad, and Ricky was taking them all. So that happened, and my dad was forced to move back in with my mom because he had no power. So my dad was obviously very concerned with Ricky when he found out that he wasn't using his money for rent, he was using it for drugs, and he was obviously very addicted. So he put him in a rehab facility. And it was weird because, yes, I was young, but I never realized, I never even noticed he had a drug problem at all. You would never be able to tell. So he goes to rehab, and while he's in rehab, he gets a few phone calls every once in a while, and he would call me, and he'd just be like, hey, how you doing? How's school going? All this stuff. So it was good to know that he wasn't completely gone. He still cared about other people, and he needed someone to talk to. And I guess I was that person, because my dad was always really strict. You'd be kind of afraid to talk to him about this kind of stuff, because he would just be like, why are you doing that? So I was kind of that guy who I would listen to him and I'd talk to him. And so that happened. He gets out of rehab, and then not too long after, my dad gets another phone call. And this time it's a lot worse. And they call him and they say, Ricky's in the hospital. We found him overdosed on heroin on the couch in the living room. So at the first time this happened, I don't go to the hospital because I don't want to see him like this. My dad doesn't want me to see him like this. So my dad goes, and he describes what he saw as, I guess he was laying on the couch so long, and he was throwing up some, and the acid in the vomit was actually eating away part of the skin on his arm. And he was there for so long, no one found him, that he actually was left with some brain damage. And to this day, you can still tell that there's something off in his head. So that happened, and I ended up going to see him a few weeks after he'd already recovered a little bit. And when you talk to him, you could tell there was something off. He was really embarrassed also for what he did and his actions, and that he was still alive. I don't know if he was trying to kill himself. I don't know if he accidentally took too much. I don't know what exactly was going on, what was going through his head. But I guess he took enough that he very easily could have died, especially if he was left there any longer. So that was just extremely hard for me to see personally. And my dad pays for another rehab facility for him after this. This one's really nice, and every day he'd have a responsibility to do, or two. It could be like anything from cleaning the dishes to taking out the trash, doing this, because they want to start integrating him back into a regular lifestyle. So he has like chores. And Ricky was just like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that today. Nope. And he wouldn't do the responsibilities. Those are literally the only obligations he had for going there. Is he had to slowly start doing these chores and become integrated into regular life again. And he decided he didn't want to do them. So he gets kicked out of rehab, even though my dad was paying a ton of money for him to go. And he ends up moving in with my cousin Scotty, who's the middle of the three brothers. So Ricky's the oldest, and then Scotty, and then the youngest brother Curtis, who's an amazing kid, very good head on his shoulders. So Scotty, who I was also very close with, but not to the same degree as Ricky. I'd go play golf with Scotty on the weekends. He'd always come to barbecues, like we'd talk and stuff, but it wasn't the same level of the relationship as with Ricky and I before this all happened. So he moved in with Scotty, and then I guess Ricky still wasn't done with this whole drug thing. I guess once you start, heroin is one of those drugs that just grabs onto you and like doesn't let go. Like, so they both start becoming users. They both are doing Xans. They're both doing prescription drugs, and they both start doing heroin eventually. So Ricky was just a terrible influence on Scotty when he moved in. But Scotty, I can't imagine saying no to your brother, not letting him come in. So, and Scotty wasn't strong enough to resist or to kick him out of the house or anything, so he started using it with him. And eventually, a few weeks go by when they're both living together, and my dad, me, nor Curtis heard anything from them. So we started getting really worried and concerned, and eventually I remember I was like, guys, like, we need to go check on them because it's been a while. None of us have heard anything. We need to go see if they're okay, if they're even living there anymore, like, what's going on. For all we know, like, they could have had a drug trade and, like, one of them got shot, or anything could happen, honestly. So we go over to their place, and we knock on the door. No one answers at first. And then a few minutes later, Ricky comes and opens the door. And I'm being dead ass. I did not even recognize Ricky. I didn't even think it was the same person. He had probably gained 30 to 50 pounds. And Ricky's a bald guy. So he had bald head, and he always shaved his face. But his face, he literally looked like a ginger Santa Claus. Because he had a big beard, like down to here, and it was just all red. And he still didn't really have hair though, so it was weird. It was really weird. And he had like his belly grew out and just had hair all over his chest and shit. And I was like, oh, what the fuck? So I walk in, and it was probably the most disturbing thing I've ever seen in my life. And my heart just dropped because you walk in the door, it smells just like dog shit and cigarettes and beer, and it was just like the most repulsive smell and sight you've ever seen. So there's dog shit just all over the floor in different spots. There's 4 Loco cans, which is like this really shitty alcoholic energy drink basically, and beer cans all over the place, and cigarette butts just all over the floor, like scattered on the floor, like being stepped on and mashed into like the carpet. And it was really, really bad. There was nowhere to walk. There was roaches running all around the floors. And Scotty wasn't even awake. Scotty was in the back bedroom, passed out. Like, we don't know if he was on something or what, but he didn't even come out of his room till like an hour later. So Curtis, my dad, and I, we spend like 30 minutes cleaning up their house. And I actually have some pictures that so we picked up everything almost, and there's still so much shit everywhere. And for some reason, like, I decided I was gonna take pictures. I think it was because I knew I wanted to do something like this at the time, even though it was 3 years ago. And so I took some pictures of what the house was looking like. And I just want to clarify that the gap between when Ricky first went to rehab and this was about 2 years apart. So sophomore year was when Ricky first went to rehab, and and then he overdosed, went to rehab again, and then he lived with Scotty, and then this happened, and this was probably only about 2 years ago. So I was a little more clear by then on what I wanted to do, and that's why I took these pictures. Not because I wasn't in the mindset to take these pictures. Is what I'm trying to say. So I take some pictures, and my dad, Curtis, and I have a very sincere and straightforward talk with him, and we say, guys, like, we've done everything we can for you. Ricky, we paid for your rehab. We've been supportive. We try to help you, but if you guys don't want to get better, if you don't want to make this difference, this change, then we can't do anything for you. So we basically tell them, like, either they need to want to make this change, this difference, or we're going to leave their lives because we don't want to watch them kill themselves. So it was just a really hard day for everyone. So after we had this talk with Scotty and Ricky, what ended up happening was Scotty moved to Ohio with his mom and lived in a halfway house where he could get back on his feet, get a job, get clean. And Ricky did the same, but instead of going up there, he went down to South Florida and also went to a halfway house. The difference was Scotty stayed in this halfway house and for a good amount of time and was doing much better. He was putting stuff on Facebook. I could see that he was improving, he was clean, he was meeting other people like him who were able to help and support him. And Ricky was down doing the same shit he was doing at the rehab center, not pulling his weight, and eventually he got kicked out of his halfway house down south. And that was the last time we heard of Ricky for a while. We didn't know if he was homeless, like on the streets, what exactly he was doing. All we know is that I guess we knew he was still alive, but we had no idea what the fuck he was doing. So let's pass forward now to about 5 months ago. I'm on my formal trip in Key West for my fraternity. So we are on our way back in one of those long ass buses, and I'm probably like towards the back. My girlfriend's passed on my shoulders. It's almost nighttime now, it's getting dark, and I get a phone call from my dad, and I'm like, this is weird. Like, my dad calls me sometimes to see how I'm doing, but I didn't expect the call this time. So I texted him, and I'm like, hey, like, what's up? Is anything wrong? Do you need anything? Like, what's going on? So he texts me back, and he's like, call me when you get home. And I'm like, what? Like, is there something wrong? Like, just tell me now. And he's like, just call me when you get back. And I was like, okay. So my dad never really does this unless it's like an emergency. So I knew in my head, I was like, something's wrong. Like, I didn't know what it was. I'm like, either my mom's not okay, someone in our family's in the hospital or dying, or the dog died. I don't know. Something was wrong. I just knew that. So I called my mom, even though like I didn't care. I was just like, I'm just gonna call my mom because she's normally straightforward with me. So I call my mom, and she's like, and I'm like, Mom, what's wrong? Like, Dad's calling me like being really like weird, and she's like, I don't want to be the one to tell you this, so just call your dad when you get back. Like, everything will be okay. And I'm like, and then at this point, now I'm actually like freaked out. Like, my heart starts kind of like racing, and I'm like, at least I know my mom's okay because she answered. So I kind of just spend the next 2 hours like just thinking about like what it could be, because I couldn't get my mind off it, and I was starting to get anxious. Like, I get anxiety sometimes when this stuff happens. So I was getting anxious, and I was just sitting there like, holy shit, like, what's going on? So I get back, and I don't call him right when I get off the bus. I wait till I get back to my girlfriend's place, and I get back there, and I call my dad, and he's like crying, and I'm like, and I don't know, I was just like, what's wrong? I guess I don't know. I was just crying, almost just like listening to him crying, and I didn't even know what was wrong yet. So he's just like, Scotty's in a better place, and I'm like, he didn't say it like that. Obviously, he was crying, and I'm like, and then I just started crying, and it was really bad, and I was like, what happened? Like, and apparently I didn't really know this, but Scotty had moved back from Ohio to Delray Beach, where I'm from. And I guess he was around the railroad tracks. And I don't know if he was drunk, I don't know if he was on heroin, I don't know what was going on, but he decided to take his life and jump in front of one of the trains going by in Delray Beach. So, yeah, he killed himself, and that was what the call was about. And luckily I was with my girlfriend at the time, so she was able to kind of like comfort me, because I was just bawling for like 30 minutes straight. This is just another example of how things can change so quickly. I mean, I thought both my cousins were doing well at this time. So I go from partying, having an amazing time in Key West with my girlfriend, all my best friends, until a day later I'm bawling on my girlfriend's bed just because my cousin took his life. So again, things can change in an instant. So just be grateful for the people you have around you. Make sure you try and keep in touch with them and just always support them, because you never know what people are going through at any time. So I would say the overall impact of this experience, it wasn't something I personally had control over really at all. So it's just never going to touch drugs ever. I'm talking about hard drugs like heroin, prescription drugs, Xanax, not alcohol, and like maybe a weed every once in a while, but hard drugs. I will never touch it. I will never support my friends who touch it. If they touch it, then I'll help them. I'll support them getting back on the right path, but I'm never gonna watch them do it and then stay in their lives as they continue to do it. And I realized that once you start these drugs, once you start heroin, it's almost impossible to get your mind right after that. Get clean. It is so hard, so please just stay the fuck away from it. And you never know what someone's going through. The smallest gesture, the smallest piece of advice, the smallest help can really make the difference in someone's life. Really, it really can. The smallest thing. So just be kind to people around you, because you never know what they're going through.